Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS slate breakdown for Wednesday, August 21st. We're going to be breaking it down and I will dive straight in. But before I do, please come join us at LineStar. And I do want to bring up the fact that we do have a free trial where you do not even have to put in a credit card to come try us out. Come join us, check us out. If you do want a full subscription, it is $39.99 per month, and it gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the tools, all the DFS, the best ball, you get it all. Now, let's get into today's slate a little bit. We got 8 games to go over, starting at normal 7:05 Eastern, and we will start with the highest owned pitchers as we always do. Now, let's shrink me a little bit. And our highest owned pitcher today is Jack Flaherty. Oops. Flaherty is coming in at 29% owned, and I think he should probably be the highest owned pitcher. He's in a decent spot versus the Seattle Mariners, who strike out a lot, have a 328 WOBA, so decent but not great, and then 165 ISO. Flaherty has had success for Seattle in the past, and I just think he is one of the better pitchers with more strikeout upside than most on this slate. 3.28 FIP, 32% K rate, very similar to his last 5 starts. His StatCast data is a little bit scary, but I wouldn't be too worried about that just due to the fact that he doesn't allow that much hard contact or barrel balls. Now, as far as the matchup, on the season, Seattle's been pretty bad. They have been much better lately with a 270 or 257 average, 200 ISO, and 361 WOBA over the last 20 games versus righties, but that's still nothing, game breaking or anything I'd be really worried about. Now, the BVP numbers, 49 plate attempts, they're only hitting 200 off of him and striking out almost 39%. So I think there's huge upside in this matchup. He would be my favorite as far as highest owned pitcher. Next, we got Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola versus the Braves. Obviously, both sides know each other very well. The one thing that I worry about with Nola a little bit is he just doesn't have too many ceiling games versus Atlanta. He's also a little higher owned, and his StatCast data is very scary. He's also been out of form a little bit lately with a 5.15 FIP over his last 5 starts. I just don't think there's quite the upside in this matchup versus the Braves. While I don't mind it, the Braves aren't the Braves that we're used to. I just don't love Nola, and I rarely use him as a DFS pitcher, and I don't think this is the spot I really want to go hard on him. Next, we got Ryan Papoy of the Tampa Bay Rays versus Oakland A's. This spot I do think is very interesting. He's only 8.3K. He's 2.2X. Oakland striking out at 25%, and they have a very low WOBA. We know this Oakland offense is very streaky, and Poi comes in with very good numbers over his last 5 starts, 2.5 FIP, 23% K rate. Then over his last 20, it's 3.95 FIP with a 27% K rate. I'm pretty interested in him, and I really think he should be the second highest owned pitcher on this slate. I think there's a lot to like, and you got the bonus that he turns 27 today. It is a good old birthday slate for him, so let's go with some Ryan Papoy. Next, we got Max Fried. It's another guy that is coming in a little funky right now. He went on the IL. Since he's been back, he just hasn't been that good. 5 walks his first game, 3 walks the second game, 3 walks the third. Now he's going back home where he's averaging 51% less fantasy points. He has a 4.7 FIP over his last 5 starts. Now, over the long term, he is a very, very good pitcher, and that could just bounce right back. But Philadelphia has been rough for him. 238 plate attempts. They're hitting 341. Only 21% K rate. I don't love the spot for Fried picking on Philly, who he just has not done well against. Next, we got Kyle Gibson, 7,800. If you want some value, you can go here. I don't love it. He lacks some upside, and he's just been kind of in meh form, plus averaging 51% less fantasy points away. 22% combined K rate versus Milwaukee, who is a pretty good offense. 210 ISO, 340 WOBA over the last 20, 254 average. I don't mind having some Milwaukee stacks. Also don't mind maybe just a little bit of Gibson. I wouldn't go overboard with Gibson. Then we got Mick Spence. Next, don't really love Spence in this spot versus Tampa Bay. But this Tampa Bay offense isn't one that I really care, or that I don't think is very good. Spence averaging more fantasy points while home. Rays 230 average, 136 ISO, under 300 WOBA versus righties over the last 20 games. I don't mind trying to pick on them. Now, Spence, 4.5 FIP over his last 20 starts, 4.98 over his last 5. He's definitely not much to write home about, but at least he can get you in that 20 range, and he's only 6,500, so I would prefer him over, say, like a Gibson if you want to come down to some value. It's a little scarier, but at least it's also less owned. Logan Gilbert, he has been an absolute stud this season. Now he is in a very, very tough matchup versus the Dodgers, so don't love the matchup, but he is extremely good, and it is in Dodger Stadium. I don't mind going on Gilbert. At least he is low owned, and he has done well versus the Dodgers in the past. 51 plate attempts, 178 average, 267 ISO. He has allowed 3 home runs, but at least he has a 308 WOBA and a 29% K rate. So Gilbert is a little scary of a click, but he is definitely one of the better pitchers on this slate. Next, we got Nasty Nestor Cortez, lefty versus Cleveland. So Cleveland has been pretty good against lefties over the last 150 games, but over the last 20, they haven't been very good. They have hit the ball hard, but they have a low WOBA. K rate, however, is down, and that is the issue with any time you're facing Cleveland, is they just don't strike out a lot. Now, Nasty Nestor is at least averaging almost 44% more fantasy points at home in his starts. We do know there is a ceiling when he gets it going. He can strike out, 7, 8, 9 guys, but upside is definitely lacking a little bit in this matchup. Now, I'm not too excited about any of the other guys, so we will flip through them and go check out the Fanduel Pitchers. And highest owned on FanDuel, we got Ryan Papoy, and I think him and Flaherty, who is second highest owned, are the clear top options on this slate. And then we got Nola and Gilbert. If you want to get a little wild, hope for a Fried bounce back at 9,200, low ownership on FanDuel. I get it, but definitely would not have very much of them. And if you want to save some money, Kyle Gibson is an interesting spot at 8,100, and a straight pivot off Ryan Papoy, since they are very, very similarly priced. But my two favorite are absolutely Papoy and Flaherty on this slate. Now, let's get over to DraftKings and check out some stacks real quick. And our highest owned stacks today is Cincinnati. Cincinnati is versus Yariel Rodriguez, who hasn't been good. 5.22 FIP over his last 5, 4.44 FIP over his last 20. Then behind him is a really, really bad bullpen for Toronto. So I think it's a pretty interesting spot to go with Cincinnati, even though they are high owned. Now, 65% is not enough where I would consider not playing them just due to ownership. Next, we got KC. KC's versus Johnny Cueto. Johnny Cueto has not been very good for years. He is a little awkward, but I don't magically think he's got better after a long way off from Major League Baseball. He has an 8.19 FIP over his last 5.64 over his last 20, and I think that 5.64 number is probably a little bit more of where he is right now. I think KC makes a very interesting stack. Tampa Bay versus Spence. I said I don't mind Spence, and I don't mind him, but I also don't mind using some stacks against him in this spot. And then I think the Angels versus Michael Lorenzen is a little interesting as well. Now, if we go to the highest projected, we got the Dodgers, KC, Philadelphia, all popping up. I don't really love the Dodgers stack. Now, the Dodgers can get to anybody, but Gilbert just doesn't give it up very much. However, they are very low owned, so they are at least of interest and something to consider. Maybe going a smaller stack instead of a bigger one due to the quality of the pitcher. KC, I think, is a very obvious stack today. Philadelphia is a very interesting one. We've seen the numbers of them versus Fried. So while Fried's been struggling a little bit, why not go some low ownership and go with some Phillies? I think it's an interesting way to go. Cleveland versus Cortez. Cortez really hasn't been that great, so I don't mind trying to pick on them a little bit with wind blowing out in New York today. Now let's go to the value stacks. We got the Tigers and Cleveland. So Tigers versus Jameson Taillon. 4.64 FIP, a FIP before over the last 20. Not the greatest matchup. It is in Wrigley. Winds are blowing in. They are a value stack. If you need to save some money, it makes some sense, but I don't really love the spot. I would rather go with the Cleveland value stack, which is a little bit more expensive, but offers a little more ceiling in a better ballpark to hit. So don't mind that. Tampa Bay, I think, is also an interesting one, as we've covered. And our highest ceiling stacks today, KC, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, Seattle, and the Dodgers. I do think the Seattle leverage stack is a little interesting. However, the likelihood of it coming through is a little bit low, and I think they should be a little lower owned than they are actually coming through. Now, quick check of the team. So our highest implied run total today is 5.2. It is with KC. I think that is an obvious one to go to today. Their bullpen isn't very good behind them, and Johnny Cueto just isn't that good at this point in his career. Next, Yankees at 4.7, Reds at 4.5, Toronto at 4.5. I think all are very interesting. After that, it gets a little hard. Dodgers, I don't love it. Atlanta, I don't love the spot. Maybe smaller stacks. They can get to Nola a little bit, but he's also a little bit of a gamer. But then I do think this Philadelphia stack at 4.3 is fairly interesting. The only issue here is that you get Bass Fried and you have a very tough bullpen to go against. Angels at 4.3 I also think is interesting, as well as Tampa Bay. And then the bottom ones are purely just leverage stacks, where you hope and pray that it comes through to get past some of the field. But that will do it for us today, guys. Have a good one. I will be back tomorrow. I wish you guys all the best of luck. Adios.